Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. And maybe not enough sound coming from there. Thank you. Okay. Hello, 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 hello. Is it better now? Okay, great. I think that's better. Very good. Okay. Now we'll continue with compassion. It'll be compassion for some time. And of course, the only reason we study about it is to put it into practice. We need to be really convinced, and not just that, also understand that our compassion right now is far from even the compassion of a hero or solitary realizer. So definitely very far from a bodhisattva, but that shouldn't discourage us, but instead encourage us to work even harder. Because if a bodhisattva can do it, we can do it. Right? We all have the same potential. But I thought to start, can you hear me in the back? Yeah, okay. I thought to start with a description of compassion, which we then use also to meditate on it, that is not from a Buddhist point of view. I just Googled it. I didn't do much more than that, and it's pretty easy to find out what is the scientific research, what is the conclusion of the scientific research on compassion. So much research on it now. At Stanford, where else? At the University of Chicago, I believe, Stanford, and a few others. Columbia, I think, yeah, Columbia as well. The first thing it tells us, it slows our aging. Whoa, that's convincing. It slows the process of aging. So there has been some research with 142 adults. They were for 12 weeks, I think it was a 12-year kind of research, and they practiced, loving kindness meditation, which is basically, closely connected to compassion meditation. I guess it works the same way. And they found that there was something called the telomere, whatever that is really, I have no idea. It's just something that shortens as we grow older. Let me just quickly go. So there's the shortening of these telomere, which has to do with our chromosomes, something to do with our DNA or chromosome. Oh, they're like the protective caps at the ends of chromosomes that naturally shorten when we age. Yeah, that's what it is. So at the end of our chromosomes, each cell has chromosomes, of course. They have these telomeres, and they don't shorten as quickly. Okay, so it keeps us young. So sometimes I'm wondering, some of the great lamas, I remember Kirti Rinpoche, he didn't have, and I checked many times, he didn't have a single gray hair. He was way into his 80s. He lived opposite where I live now, so he just lived opposite at Kirti Monastery, and sometimes I was called to translate for him. So he usually sit kind of like a meter or 2 meters away, and I checked. I never saw a single gray hair. Okay, of course, eventually he did pass away. He was way into his 80s. He did pass away. But, of course, we all have to die at some point. But if aging is not as extreme, then there's just less suffering through aging, and we're more able to do other things. Anyway, so look out for the telomeres. Then, of course, there are great mental health benefits, or other physical. I should continue with the physical. It reduces inflammation in the body. So it's been linked to preventing chronic diseases, for instance. Again, you can look it all up, the whole research. It lowers blood pressure. That makes total sense. It calms the mind. And if it calms the mind, it calms the body. And if the body is not in a constant stress, well, then of course it has an effect on our blood pressure. Whereas afflictions like anger, they create stress in our body. Usually it says, in the text it says it disturbs our mind, but that's just another way of saying it triggers a stress response in body and mind. If you've been calm the whole day and suddenly you get upset, it's stressful. So it definitely lowers our blood pressure. and it boosts our immune system. Yeah, it makes us more resilient to illness. That's just from a physical point of view. And since we're pretty obsessed nowadays with our bodies, I guess that's pretty convincing to practice compassion. And then mentally, of course, it improves our mental well-being greatly. So it reduces negative emotional states, of course, as a result. And mentally, we just feel happier, more content. It increases our mental resilience. So it helps us to recover quicker from stress and adversity, like external, adverse circumstances arise. They may be stressful in the moment, but if we practice compassion, we're more resilient. So we recover quicker from that stressful situation. It enhances our social connections, of course, right? So it strengthens our social bonds, which are in turn, again, very important for our mental health. And very important, and I already mentioned it, it reduces stress, it reduces loneliness and anxiety. What are we scared of when we consider everyone to be our friend? When we have compassion for all sentient beings, and especially great compassion for all sentient, okay, how can we check? How can you? You're right, sitting. Just stretch your legs. Okay. All right. So, therefore, compassion, if we have great compassion in particular, it doesn't matter what people do to us. In fact, that triggers even more compassion. If someone harms us, if someone is rude, if someone is out to, insult us and so forth, the response is compassion. If we truly have compassion, why? Because I don't want to be them. Who wants to be a person who's driven by aversion and anger and the wish to harm others? That's terrible. So if we put ourselves into that person's shoes, it becomes pretty obvious that, well, they're suffering. At the very least, they're suffering from aversion, but definitely from stress, possibly loneliness, and so forth. Therefore, even if someone harms us, what are we afraid of? There's no anxiety. Afraid of what? Yeah. So, therefore, great compassion, and this is just the scientific result of research on compassion. Loneliness? How can you feel lonely? Because we know loneliness has got nothing to do with being alone. You can feel very lonely in a group of people. But if everyone's well-being is close to your heart, if they're all getting along really well and you're the odd one out, fine. So happy they enjoy themselves, right? You have this observer position because you're not included in the conversation. So great. You have this observer position. Oh, how wonderful. They're all getting along. They're so happy. So how can you feel lonely? Loneliness is really a state of mind. It's absolutely a state of mind. And once you generate compassion, there's this sense of closeness towards all sentient beings. No way you can feel lonely because you've got all these sentient beings whose success you can rejoice in. Just as we feel close to ourselves, you feel close to sentient beings. And if we feel close to sentient beings, just as we rejoice in our own success, we rejoice in their success. And there's so much success others have, so much to be happy about. I mean, I may sound really idealistic here. It's like, wow, it sounds great in theory, but there are people who can do it. Well, our mind actually has totally, in all ways, the capacity to do so. Just right now, there's certain other mental states that prevent our mind from doing so. That's it. And these mental states are not even in the nature of our mind. They're just temporary states that are not in the nature of the mind. They can be totally removed and the mind continues. That's important to realize. So they're temporary, not part of us. Right? That's like worrying about some limp I don't know, like a third arm that looks ugly. Well, it's not my arm. It's someone, it's just this artificial limb that's been attached to my body. So why do I worry about it? I just need to take it off, basically, right? It's not part of who I am. So likewise, the afflictions are not part of my body, of my mind. They're not part of my mind. Oh, no sound. No sound? Okay. Banu writes, University of Wisconsin-Madison. That's right. Yes, exactly. I couldn't think of it. Yeah. So the scans of Mingyur Rinpoche while he meditated on compassion showed 800% rise in activity of areas of the brain responsible for happiness. 800% more happiness. Wow. That would be a very effective commercial. Practice compassion. Guaranteed, 800%. The University of Wisconsin has shown. We lost sound connection. Okay. No, okay. Oh, it's yeah, so I don't think there's a problem. Maybe there's a problem on your device because, yeah, you've just checked and it works. Yeah, Banu also says sound is fine. All right. Okay, so Vada, please wait. We're still doing the motivation. So all this is such a good reason to practice compassion. I mean, what is there more meaningful? What is there better? What is there more important than to practice great compassion? Okay, so on that note, let's do it together. So to remember, first of all, that sentient beings are really a part of us. That from a spiritual point of view or worldly point of view, none of the things we enjoy are possible without other sentient beings. But right now, sentient beings are driven, are controlled by their root misconception, experiencing countless different sufferings and problems, and even their happiness is inferior to the kind of bliss and happiness a liberated being, for instance, experiences. So let's generate the sincere aspiration for all sentient beings to be free from any type of suffering, any type of limitation that is not in the nature of their mind. Think, may I be able to bring this about? May I be able to help sentient beings so that they can overcome all their faults and limitations. let that aspiration turn into the resolve, the determination to help sentient beings overcome all their shortcomings and limitations. In the form of liberation or full enlightenment. And since we can realistically only accomplish this if we first come fully enlightened ourselves, let's generate the sincere aspiration to actualize our fullest potential in the form of our complete enlightenment for the benefit of each and every sentient being. So without letting go of that motivation, let's recite the prayers. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merits of listening to the teachings, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merits of listening to the teachings, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merits of listening to the teachings, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. Whatever the situation, in any kind of circumstance, it just pops up. Now, the same is true for compassion. I can say the same about compassion. At times, when you meditate, when you still meditate on compassion, you have to make an effort, you need to go through the meditations, even it may just take a few seconds. Is it working? It may take just a few seconds. Nevertheless, even though it may still it requires some effort. That's contrived compassion. Uncontrived is when it arises spontaneously. Now his question is, do you also have that distinction for the mind realizing emptiness, contrived and uncontrived? What do you think? It's an interesting question, right? Contrived and uncontrived for the mind realizing emptiness. What do you think? Anyone? We're back. Okay, great. Is there any suggestion?
Krishna maybe like on top of seeing, it's a direct realization, so there are no differences. But before part of seeing, on the second part, it seems like emptiness meditation, but it is not. So to me, it seems like there's a little bit of.
Okay, so your suggestion is that on the path of seeing, that's uncontrived realization of emptiness because it's a direct experience, versus a conceptual mind that precedes the path of seeing when you realize emptiness conceptually. But that's just a matter of how you realize it. But what about that spontaneity? I mean, we've heard it's got to do with arising spontaneously versus having to make an effort. Okay, honestly, I don't know. I can ask you further and we can guess. I've never heard the word used in that way. I've never come across any scriptural passage that talked about contrived realization of emptiness or uncontrived. It doesn't mean it's not there, I may have read over it and not paid attention to it, or I just didn't read the right text. However, it doesn't make sense to me, really, in the sense that either you realize emptiness or you don't. The quality of realization can differ. But in the very beginning, I think it was at the very beginning, I talked about the difference between generating compassion and generating the realization of emptiness. Generating compassion is relatively easy in the sense it's to generate it in your mind is not that difficult. It's contrived, yes. It's not the actual spontaneously rising compassion, but it doesn't take that long. However, to make it come back is always requires effort. Again and again, you need to familiarize, right? Again and again, repetition, repetition, repetition. It's all about repetition. Versus realizing emptiness. Once you realize emptiness, yes, there's still repetition required to strengthen that mind, but you realize it, you realize it. In the very beginning, you could still lose that realization, that's possible, but at some point it becomes strong enough, you've understood emptiness and that's it. Now the mind just needs to be strengthened. But to get there takes a really long time. You need to go over the reasonings again and again and again. Still familiarize, habituate yourself with the reasoning. Why doesn't it make sense that phenomena exist inherently and so forth? Therefore, I would say my sense is, therefore, you don't use that term because it's just a different type of mind. It's not a mind that realizes its object. All right. Now I'm getting long explanations here, which is great. I want to encourage this, but I don't have the time to read the questions right now. I'll try to do it a little later. Yeah, if they're a little longer, it will take too long. But anyway, I'll address all of them. Also, Maud, she did a great job again and again asking questions. So no need to apologize for some of the questions or any questions. They're all great. Any kind of contribution is great. All right, now what I'd like to do today, I read through some of the commentaries and they're beautiful in their explanations. First of all, last time I talked about one quote in the Lamrim Chenmo, in the great treatise of the stages to the path, on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, that says Pratyeka Buddhas aim for their own enlightenment or their own Buddhahood. They want to become Buddhas, which is not anything we found in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary here, where he talked about Buddha, Pratyeka Buddha, referring to realizing, knowing, understanding, or incontrovertibly understanding. But in his Lamrim Chenmo, in the first volume, I forgot to write down the page number. Anyway, you can find it. There are those who are without great compassion or dependency on others and who wish to become Buddhas themselves. When they have practiced the 10 virtuous actions through understanding dependent arising, they will achieve the state of a Pratyeka Buddha. So Lama Tsongkhapa is pretty clear. Here they want to become Buddhas. That's why Pratyeka Buddhas. All right. Just because I mentioned this quote, I thought to give you the quote. You'll find that in the Lamrim Chenmo. But again, in contrast to this explanation, Lama Tsongkhapa gives a different explanation in his illumination of the intent. Okay, remember? Does this make sense? Yeah, Pratyeka Buddha, as in like who realizes suchness, someone who realizes suchness for their own benefit. Okay. Then there's this whole discussion whether hearers and solitary realizers have great compassion or not. I don't know how interesting you may find that, but the thing is, it's still important to understand the different levels of compassion. There are just different levels of compassion. There's the compassion we have right now, which is very limited in terms of its focus. It's focused on very few sentient beings. It is limited also from the point of view of its aspect. Now, these are new terms. For some of you, these are new terms. Focal object and aspect. Very important words that are used a lot when referring to the object of a mind. The focal object and the aspect. The focal object is basically the basis based on which you now perceive something. To give you an example in terms of, for instance, realizing impermanence, take a mind that knows impermanence, that knows my own body is impermanent. The focus is my own body. The aspect is its impermanence, right? It's mainly the impermanence of something specific, of a basis, which is my body. Not every mind has a focal object that is different from the aspect. Sometimes you just think about a table, just table. The focus is table, the aspect is table. But in particular, when you have a certain object and you reflect on a characteristic of that object, then in order to distinguish the two, you talk of a focal object and an aspect, right? So is my body impermanent or not? Does my body lack inherent existence or not? Is it in the nature of suffering or not? So it's just this technical terminology that helps to distinguish between the two. So my body is in the nature of suffering. The focus is my body, and the aspect is that it's in the nature of suffering. Now going back to great compassion, here the mind is not analyzing, the mind itself is not analyzing. Previous to generating compassion, of course we have to analyze. But the mind itself aspires, wishes for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, right? It's this aspiring mind. I guess aspiration is stronger than just wishing, isn't it? In English, wouldn't you say? Right? To wish, to aspire stronger, isn't it? What do you think? Well, here the word in Tibetan is actually to wish, to aspire. There's not much difference. Okay, but implied is definitely the sincere wish, the sincere aspiration. Now, what is the focus of great compassion? All sentient beings. What is the aspect? Freedom from suffering. Right? So you focus on all sentient beings and you wish for them to be free from suffering. What does your compassion take to mind? That absence of suffering. So focus, all sentient beings and their absence of suffering. And that's what you wish for. You take that to mind by way of wishing for it. Okay, so that's just in terms of the technical terminology that is used. All right, now, our compassion right now, the focus is just a few sentient beings. And every now and then, if we witness some problem on the, I don't know, while walking through McLeodganj, we see a dog that's suffering, for instance. Yeah, there is compassion. So the focal object is that particular living being. But first of all, it's unlikely that it arises continuously. It's like in that moment, yes. But then we forget about the dog and that kind of compassion is gone. And it's definitely not focused on all sentient beings. Also, what kind of suffering do we wish sentient beings to be free from? What kind of suffering do you ordinarily?
Suffering of suffering.
Suffering of suffering. What we ordinarily all agree on being suffering. Okay, may they be free from suffering. And we can start with that. No one is saying jump right into the universal vehicle kind of compassion. That's ridiculous. So we start with as many people, many beings we can. Now, all this is not just for an academic purpose. When we hear study in the West, usually we think study in order to accumulate knowledge. That's it. But of course, that's not what study is all about. It's study, reflection, in order to practice it. And no one is saying, oh, you should only practice when you finish your studies. The best case scenario is to study it, to practice it right away. And we don't need to do this on a super quiet place where there's no noise, no disruption, on a super comfortable cushion where we have no pain whatsoever. And we just want to stay there for hours on end. So we feel so happy and blissed out. That's usually what we expect of meditation. Should be super quiet, free from pain, and blissful. Yeah, and that's why usually we complain. Oh, I didn't have a good meditation. I wasn't feeling so good. Right? We have this kind of like nirvana expectation. Like, I have an experience of liberation nirvana. Oh, that was a good meditation. Actually, the more stuff comes up, the better. The more obstacles we face, the more we become aware of the work we still need to do. It's a bit like washing your shirt and expecting the water to remain very clean and soapy and smelling good, right? I mean, that would not be a successful laundry process, would it? It'd be scary if you worn that shirt for like a month on end and you haven't really washed it ever. And there's nothing coming out. That would be, oops, something wrong with my soap. Likewise, when we do meditation, well, yeah, it's supposed to be messy. Stuff is supposed to come up. And if it's not super quiet, that's okay. We're not doing shamatha. And if it's not super comfortable, well, yeah, that's because our body's in the nature of suffering. What do we expect? But we don't need to do it on the meditation cushion anyway. We can do it anywhere. Remind ourselves again and again. Now, ideally, if you do this homework, then it pops up also throughout the day. Compassion becomes your companion. Becomes your companion for a few days. And it doesn't contradict. There's no contradiction with any other Buddhist study you're doing, right? So there's no problem with that. Anyway, we start where we are, which means a focal object, a few sentient beings, aspect, suffering of suffering. But let's recognize it's limited in that way. Just focal object and aspect. Now, hear us and solitude realize us. The question is it all sentient beings or not? That's the focus. And then what's the aspect? What is the aspect of hear us and solitude realize us compassion? What kind of suffering are we talking about here? What do they wish for sentient beings to be free from? What is it? What kind of suffering is that? Suffering of suffering? Anyway. How about more than that? Yeah, so suffering of chain and pervasive condition suffering. All three. More than that? Do you think they also wish for all sentient beings to be free from cognitive obscurations?
Including the pervasive condition suffering.
Pardon?
Including the pervasive condition suffering.
No. We're talking about suffering from the point of view of the fundamental vehicle. We distinguish, like last time, I hope I didn't confuse you too much when I talked about the Four Noble Truths from the point of view of the universal vehicle. Usually there's a distinction. They're not the same. And the Four Noble Truths as we know them are the Four Noble Truths from the point of view of the fundamental vehicle. The Four Noble Truths from the point of view of the universal vehicle are different. Okay. Now, hearers and solitary realizers have no reason to focus on full enlightenment. I mean, why do hearers and solitude realizers not aim for full enlightenment? Well, I don't know. There could be different reasons. Maybe they don't assert that it's possible, or it's not possible for them right now. Why do they expect that of others, basically? So, basically, I mean, I would, and this is supported by what I'm going to read to you in a moment. Basically, they want for all sentient beings to be free, or they want for sentient beings to be free from the three types of suffering. They want for them to be liberated with all their heart. It's totally sincere, incredible compassion. I mean, like our compassion cannot be compared to theirs. So we have still a lot of work to do. And that's why it's the fundamental vehicle. It's the foundation from where we need to move on. So we start off sentient beings, but there are some quotes, some quotes in the text which are saying that heroes and solitary realizers have limitless compassion, but not great compassion. Limitless. So in a way, they don't focus on all sentient beings, which again also makes sense because those arhats, why should they want for the arhats to be free from the 3 types of suffering when they are already free? So in that sense, it could be, okay, so for the benefit of all sentient beings who have not become liberated yet, they want them to be free from suffering. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Okay. Yeah, so anyway, so Chandrakirti's, so great compassion versus limitless compassion, and it's very clear here solitary realizers have limitless compassion, but not great compassion, could be from that point of view.
Is limitless immeasurable?
Immeasurable, yeah, sorry. Immeasurable, sorry. Yeah.
Is it the same or different?
Yeah, it's the same. Actually, it's not limitless, it's not the right kind of word. Temme. Te means measure, me means no measure. So immeasurable is a better word. Although sometimes boundless is the translation for that Tibetan word. We have the 4 immeasurables, right? So sometimes they're described as boundless love, boundless compassion, boundless equanimity, and so forth. Okay, so therefore, heroes and solitary realizers don't have great compassion. But I haven't even talked about the wish ourselves to contribute. That I haven't even mentioned. But just from the point of view of the focal object, doesn't have to be all sentient beings, because there are some sentient beings who no longer have the 3 types of suffering. Therefore, the focal object is not the same, the aspect is not the same. Okay. And first of all, that heroes and solitary realizers do not have great compassion is supported by Chandrakirti's 70 verses on the 3 refuges. On the 3 refuges. So 70 verses on the 3 refuges. It says, concerned with their own benefit and lacking great compassion, Pratyeka Buddhas who have arisen from the speech of the Buddhas are not praised in the universal vehicle. So their own benefit is not saying they're selfish. This is not being selfish. Heroes and solitary realizers are not selfish, but they work for their own liberation. So in that way, they work for their own benefit and are not focused on all sentient beings, wanting them to be free from any kind of shortcoming, any kind of obscuration. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't think I need to read this. Yeah, I don't. I think there's also a text called Jankya Rinpoche's presentation of classical Indian philosophy. This is a beautiful text. It's been translated into English. It's called The Beautiful Adornment of Mount Meru, and it describes the different philosophical schools, the Vaibhashika, the Sautantrika. It's been translated, and in there he also talks about saying that Lama Tsongkhapa's stages or Lamrim text, he says that there's great compassion in the continuum of heroes and solitary realizers, but not the great compassion that is able to induce the superior intention or the altruistic resolve on taking on the burden of the welfare of others. So Lama Tsongkhapa seems to be saying they have great compassion, but Jankya Rinpoche then later on says this cannot be taken literally. What can be taken literally is Ketubji and Gyaltsabji, so Lama Tsongkhapa's 2 main disciples, where they say that they have limitless love and compassion, but not great compassion. Okay. But then I came across this beautiful commentary. We used to study that as well when we studied Uma. It's by a Mongolian geshe called Lobsang Dayang. Jankya Rinpoche, just if you're interested, he was born 1717, lived up till 1786. He was a very important scholar from Amdo. He received teachings from the 7th Dalai Lama, and later on he played a key role in identifying the 8th Dalai Lama. So if you get a bit of a sense historically how important he was. Very, like when you study philosophy, he comes up a lot in the Gelugpa tradition, Changyar Rinpoche, especially if you study the different philosophical tenet systems, which is such an effective way to understanding the Prasangika, because it slowly takes you to the highest school, like preparing your mind in that way. So therefore, Changyar Rinpoche's text is very important, and it's been translated into English. Good news. Okay. But then there's, like I said, this Geshe Lobsang Dayang, and he composed a text, the lamp that clearly illuminates the profound meaning. He was born in 1867 in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, and he was a Mongolian. And he's often compared to the Indian Pandit Ashwagosha, whose name he shares. Dayang means Ashwagosha. Dayang, the Tibetan word. Anyway, so he was actually part of a Buddhist monastery in Ulaanbaatar called Kunga Choling Monastery that was modeled after Drepung Losaling Monastery in Tibet. So interesting, there were quite a few. We don't hear much about Mongolia. We don't hear much about them, but they were incredible scholars. Even Changyar Rinpoche was ethnically, he was born in Amdo, but his parents were Mongolians. And the strong connection between Tibetans and Mongolians we're not aware of. And one of the earliest great masters who went to the West was a Mongolian master. Forget his name now. Do you remember his name? So the Jeffrey Hopkins, these earlier Buddhist scholars in the West, they received teachings from him. He already went to the West in the 60s.
New York and New Jersey.
New Jersey, I think, yeah, that makes sense. I forget his name now. So there's this really strong Mongolian connection. Sometimes they speak very good Tibetan, and so we don't really know they're Mongolian or not. Yeah, and sometimes their parents are Mongolian. Who knows? Anyway, so this master here, he says something. He gave this explanation I really liked, and I hope I don't bore you with this. It's not too boring for you. He describes, and this is just a rough translation of this passage. So he says, generally, there are 5 types of differences between the compassion of the fundamental and universal vehicle in terms of their scope. So difference in terms of their focus, focal object, aspect, intensity of loving concern, function, and strength. So let's see whether that's correct or not. And again, just for us to better understand these 2 levels and to go through, we have to go through the kind of love and compassion, or compassion in particular, of a hero and solitary realizer. You can't jump. Yeah, so you go step by step, you go through them, right? I mean, you may, of course, aim right away for great compassion, but your compassion only slowly increases. Okay, so the difference in object of focus. When the compassion of the fundamental vehicle focuses on sentient beings, it does so in a partial way. So its object of focus has a narrow scope. Doesn't have the same scope. Narrow is maybe not the best word, but it doesn't have the same wide scope. The compassion of the universal vehicle focuses on all sentient beings by distinguishing each and every division infinitely. So its object of focus has a vaster scope. These are described in the Shravaka Bhumi. Shravaka Bhumi is an important text by Asanga. Shravaka Bhumi. It's from the 4th or 5th century. It's been translated into Tibetan. And it actually describes Shravakas. So you want to hear more about Shravakas? They are described here. So he says, among those who are suffering and those who have become happy, friends, enemies, and neutral persons, whoever has suffering is the object of compassion. So that's supporting what I said earlier. Those who are happy, like arhats, who've attained happiness, they don't wish for them to be free from suffering. Why would they? But instead, those who have suffering, those who are still in samsara, for them, those are the object, right, for a hero solitary realizer. Of course, why would they focus on the arhats? Yeah, they're focused on those sentient beings who are not liberated yet. While the Bodhisattva or someone following the universal vehicle, they focus on all sentient beings, including the arhats. Okay, then there's a difference in aspect. The compassion of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas merely wishes to liberate sentient beings from suffering in general. Means the three types of suffering. Okay. While the compassion of Bodhisattvas takes on the burden of wishing to protect them from all faults. Faults here means all obscurations. All obscurations. As stated in Illuminating the Intent, these three types of compassion are all endowed with the cognitive aspect, wishing to protect all sentient beings from all forms of suffering. So in that sense, they are very different from the compassion of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. So here, compassion referring to all obscurations, wishing them to become enlightened, right? Okay? Only if it's a clarification.
But you're using two different terminologies, yeah? You're saying liberate and protect.
No, protect. Yeah, well, I'm not using this. This is the terminology. Yeah, protect them in the sense of helping them to reach liberation, and in that way protect them. Right? It's just the terminology is like it's just used differently. Maybe in English we would the same. It's the same meaning. It's got the same meaning. Yeah. There's also a difference in intensity of loving concern. So here they said the compassion of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas is like fire touching the skin, while the compassion of Bodhisattvas is like fire touching the flesh. It goes deeper. It goes deeper. I mean, it has to, because otherwise why would you aim for full enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, taking that much longer? This is supported by a sutra that's called the Questions of King Dharani, or Dharani Raja, where it says the compassion of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas is like the aspect of skin, and the compassion of Bodhisattva like the aspect of flesh. And then, of course, there's a difference in function. It says in this text, the compassion of Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddhas are reactive. I'm not really sure what this means. Lenla Döba, it says. Lenla Döba means are dependent on the answer, but it doesn't really make sense. So in the quote that is given from the same sutra, the sutra of the king of the Dharani, there it says, the compassion of Shravakas depends on loving kindness. So being loving and kind and helping them, but the compassion of Bodhisattvas depends on the complete ripening of sentient beings. So it's this taking on personal responsibility. I'm now responsible for all sentient beings. That's the attitude of a Bodhisattva. While Shravakas, they do their best. It's reactive. They do what they can in the spur of the moment, but it's not the aim to lead all sentient beings to liberation or even enlightenment. And in strength, there's also a difference in strength. Being wary of others' welfare in the sense of not feeling they can take all sentient beings, work for the welfare of all sentient beings. Whereas from the point of view of the universal vehicle, they don't feel wariness. Instead, it gives them this determination and strength. The welfare of sentient beings that keeps them going. So that's the difference. It encourages them. So more suffering, the better, basically. Yeah. So I thought it was really beautiful, this distinction from the point of view of focal object or focus, aspect, the strength of loving concern, the function and strength. All right. Okay. So having said all this, let's go back to the text. We were on page, someone asked, Mac asked, 62. All right, in my copy, it's 56, it's 50, yeah, 50, actually 57. We completed verse number 2, which means, so 57, so that is in the book. 47. 47, and in the PDF, you just add 5 pages. That's 62, page 62, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Again, I haven't had the chance to read everything in the group. All right, next verse. Paying homage to compassion that takes sentient beings as its object. Now, here now we're differentiating the different types of compassion. We discussed this compassion in general, in great detail. Now, we look at the 3 types of compassion. There's said to be 3 types of compassion. One type is compassion that takes sentient beings as its object. It's a little bit, the terminology is a little confusing, but this is quite interesting. So now it talks about how suffering arises, first of all. So, first, with the thought, I am, this is Chandrakirti's text. First, with the thought, I am, they cling to a self. Then, with the thought, mine, they become attached to things. Like buckets on a water wheel, they turn without control. I bow to the compassion that cares for such suffering beings. All right, I have to send you a picture of a water wheel. I'll put that in the UMA class. Years ago, I taught this online during COVID. This text, I went through it quite quickly actually, but people ask me, what is a water wheel? And I found a picture online and I sent it to our group then, so I can do that. It's a particular type of, like a water wheel. It's a particular kind of well, if you like. And it's exactly how they describe it. It's actually probably from India, I guess, the picture. I don't know where I got the picture from, but yeah. Anyway, what's more important, or what we will discuss first, is the thought I am, the first 2 lines. So, since the identity view, grasping at I, gives rise to the identity view, grasping at mine. Okay, just a second, let me make sure. Yeah. The identity view. Okay, so the identity view grasping at I gives rise to the identity view grasping at mine. All right. That is prior to the identity view. Identity view is an interesting translation. I haven't had a chance to look at the other translations, but so usually it means the view of the transitory collection. That's the identity view. So our sense of I, our wrong view of I. So identity views is not a bad translation. It's just very different to the traditional translation. So our view of our personal view, I'm not talking about anyone else's, our personal view of ourself or of our I. That's here described as the identity view. Right? So first there is a perception of I as inherently existent. There's an inherent I. So every time we think of I, at least an inherently existent I appears. That I appears to us inherently existent. Okay? And then every now and then we actively grasp at the I as being inherently existent. So there's a slight difference. When I look at this table, it appears to exist inherently. When I think about the table, I think about a table that appears to exist inherently, but that doesn't mean that the table I think about doesn't exist, right? To me, it appears as inherently existent, but if I were to say that that table is an inherently existent table that I think about, then I wouldn't have any objects that exist. Then whatever objects I think about, it would be non-existent, because they always appear to exist inherently. Am I making sense? So it seems to us this table is called a table because it is one. We call it that because it already is a table. That's what it seems, right? There's really a table. It's almost like telling me, I'm a table, look at me. I mean, it's not doing that, I'm exaggerating here, but it seems there's a sense, there's a table. It's got nothing to do with my mind, in other words. My mind is like a looking glass into the world. It just sees things for what they are, right? That's what it seems. And when I say, look at this table, isn't it pretty? And you disagree, I'm thinking, how weird are you guys? It's so pretty, can't you see it? Right? Or if you were to say, we don't see a table, even worse. Oh my God, you're all hallucinating. I'm the only one who sees it. But the point is here, I believe everyone sees the same thing. Of course you do, because it's all out there. The objects that appear to my mind have nothing to do with my mind. It's not that they appear to me because I have a mind. Therefore they appear. No, it's they appear because they're there. Okay? All right. Just a sec. Otherwise I forget to drink. All right. So this view, when it comes to a table, we also have with the eye. Since we were little, we've been thinking I. Right? Okay? Even before we had a word to refer to it, we just don't remember what it was, but something appeared to our mind, me as opposed to everyone else. Now some people believe, no, when we were little, we had no sense of an I. I'm pretty sure you did. We did. Because, for instance, there are videos of twins, identical or not identical twins in the womb, punching each other. So they don't punch themselves, they punch the other one. It's just these videos I want, like they do have like, they kind of, so I mean, I'm not talking about the unrealistic one, there are some unrealistic ones, but I think I've also seen the realistic ones where so there's a clear, this is my space, you're my, so there's a distinction, even at that age, even before language. And of course, our sense of identity, the way it is now, very different from when we were little, no question. But that we had a sense of identity and there was a sense of I, right? Definitely. When you look at a baby with a scary face, they start crying, right? Like they looked at me. Definitely. If instead someone looked at something else in a scary way, they don't start to cry. So there's definitely a sense, this is me as opposed to everyone else. Or when they're jealous of each other, envious of each other. They got the bottle, I didn't get the bottle. It shows. So we were born with that sense of an I. In fact, there was never a time when we didn't have that. That's why it's so difficult. What are we talking about? Our body and our mind, of the two, our self-centeredness and our body, our self-centeredness is so much older than our body. It's existed since beginningless time. So our body being stiff and, not being able to do, no big deal. With our mind being stiff or having a hard time to understand what we're talking about, no big deal. So that's why it's so difficult. Just because we perceive the opposite of what Lama Tsongkhapa, what Acharya Chandrakirti is talking about here. All right. But the point is that we have this view of ourselves, and every time the I appears, it appears to exist in a way in which it doesn't exist. And when it just appears, that's one thing. But when we actively grasp at that appearance being in accordance with reality, that's called the identity view. That's called, the type is described as ignorance that grasps at the I. Now, to give you a bit of a sense, what is the difference between just appearance and grasping? A simple example is a mirror. When you look in a mirror, what appears to your eye consciousness? You appear to your eye consciousness. Your face appears to you. It's not your face. It's not your face, of course not. It's just a reflection of your face, but it appears to be your face. So when you then hold that to be your face, that is like the grasping at the appearance. Yeah, when you hold that to be, so little like babies, they do that. Cats and dogs do that. I did it once. I remember my mom came to Delhi and she was in a hotel. There was this huge mirror, I told you, right, in the hallway, and there were plants around it, and I walked towards it and I was like, oh, there's another nun. Oh no, it's me. Right? So in that moment, it appeared to be a nun, and I held on to it to be an actual nun, not recognizing myself. Further away, right? So I held on to that appearance. So there are plenty of examples when we have a wrong consciousness, something appears to be what is it? Mikyu in Tibetan, from far away, like when you see like in the desert, you see like a
Mirage.
mirage, that's right. A mirage, yeah. So when you see a mirage, either you know, oh, that's just an appearance, or you believe there really to be, I don't know, something nearby, a city or something, or whatever, water, there appear to be water. So similarly here, whenever the I appears, it appears to exist in a way that's beyond being just labeled by the mind on the basis of either our consciousness or our body. There seems to be something really there. And depending how strong that is, that may be very separate from mind and body. It may be the controller of mind and body. But that doesn't mean that the I always appears that way. However, at the very least, it appears to exist in and of itself as not being merely labeled. And then when we grasp, every now and then we grasp that to be true, that is the identity view. Okay. That gives rise to the identity view that grasps at mine. So my body. It grasps at an inherent I first, and then grasps at an inherent mine. Inherent my body, right? Yeah, of course, if there's an inherent I, there must be an inherent mine. In Tibetan, the word is that which is of I, of the I. So mine is often, they have another word where they just use the genitive, as we do in English, mine, but there's also a way in which it's expressed, and that is more effective because there's a sense, for instance, the body of the I. So instead of saying my body, they express it in a way saying the body of the I, the body of the self, the mind of the self. If there's an inherent I, there's also an inherent body of the I, right? So, or an inherent my body, if you like. So inherent mind. Okay. So first you have the misconception grasping at an inherent I, which gives rise to the misconception grasping at an inherent mind. But because it's grasping at that which is of the I, it is also grasping at the I. It grasps at the body, for instance, as inherently existent, and since it is my body, also at the inherent existence of the I. It does both. When we grasp at the inherent existence of my body, then because it's my body, it's the inherently existent body of the inherently existent I. That's how it appears to the mind, or how it's perceived by the mind. Anyway, having said this, first, that is, prior to the identity view manifestly clinging to mine, the identity view grasping at I, assuming a self that does not possess intrinsic existence as existing by virtue of an intrinsic nature, manifestly clings to the referent of the thought, I am as real. Okay, so this is just saying, first there is the misperception of I, then the misperception of mine, and the misperception of everything else. But that's a very general sense, and from there all the trouble starts. But this is very coarse. This is very coarse process. Now the question is, or not coarse as much, but it doesn't tell you more what happens afterward. It just says from grasping at the I, you have grasping at mine, and then all the other problems start. But what happens really? To more precise, or to more in a more detailed fashion, how do we get from this identity view to all our problems? Okay. So first, of course, there's grasping at inherent existence. That's the root. And I'm here not even specifying inherent existence of I or inherent existence of others. There is, first of all, inherent existence, no matter what. Okay? So in general, roughly speaking, we can say the perpetrator is the mind that perceives whatever there is, whatever appears to our mind, to exist in and of itself. not being merely labeled. Okay. Now that is true for the I, as for my own I, but this is also true for your eyes, for what I think of like you as a person. I perceive of you, of each one of you, as existing. There's something inherent within you that is not your mind, that is not your body, and that's beyond me labeling you as person or as Sina or Venerable Kumpen or whatever your names are. There seems to be something more. Okay, that's what my mind does. Automatically kind of attributes, that's not the right word. Attributes? Kind of adds something to how you actually exist. Right? Attributes?
Like decorate.
Decorate. Yeah. Decorate. Pardon? Superimpose. Yeah, that's also a good word. Yeah. Superimpose. So decorate or superimposes. So, of course, you exist with mind and body, and on the basis of your mind and body, I label Zina, I label person, I label whatever I label. I do that with regard to myself, and I do that with regard to you. But I'm not satisfied with that. My mind automatically superimpose, adds something to that, as if you were such and such, independently of anything. You just are this person, not dependent on imputation, on mentally labeling. But the next step then is that I perceive my own I to be more precious. Huh? Why do I not find all of you equally precious? Why, if I perceive you, and tables and chairs, by the way, anyway, but especially when it comes to persons, because our attachments are strongest to other living beings. Our attachment is stronger. Well, some people may love their money more than anyone else, but at the very least, they love their self more than anything else, right? When it comes down to their own life and their money, maybe some people would rather give up their life than their money. Oh gosh, that would be really silly. But anyway, let's say in general, our attachment is mainly focused on others. But it is never so strong. We never attach to others as much as we attach to ourselves. And actually, that attachment is preceded by an exaggerating mind. It's not mentioned here. In Tibetan, it's Tsumiichi Ginamdo. Tsumiichi Ginamdo means literally inappropriate attitude, if you like. Inappropriate. But that's just the word. Really what it means is a mind that exaggerates the importance of something, or the ugliness of something, or whatever. For instance, before aversion, we exaggerate the negative aspect of that which we feel aversion towards. Before attachment, we exaggerate the positive aspect of the object of attachment. That's very, very important. So attachment doesn't just arise on its own. You need to first exaggerate the aspect, the objects of that. You exaggerate the positive aspects of your object of attachment. So we've heard, I perceive everything, whatever there is in the world, to exist inherently, you and I equally. But my mind exaggerates the greatness, the importance of this I. It doesn't exaggerate your importance. Why not? Should be doing that, but it doesn't. Why not? Why does my mind exaggerate my importance? Why does my mind exaggerate the importance of this I, but not the importance of everyone else's that my mind equally perceives to exist in a way in which you don't exist?
Self-centeredness.
Self-centeredness hasn't arisen yet. You see, before self-centeredness can arise, self-centeredness is a type of attachment to the I. It's a type of attachment to I and mind. Self-centeredness is attachment. But we need to understand how that attachment arises, first of all, and how it manifests. So we're still at the moment before it hasn't risen yet. Okay? Now, the sequence I describe, it's not like really saying, oh, there was a time when we only had this mind and we didn't. This is not about this. It's just saying in general what comes first. First comes the misconception of reality with respect to any object, not just the eye. But although my mind equally perceives all objects to exist inherently, if you were to ask and I thought about it, my answer would be everything exists equally inherently. If you explain to me inherent existence so that I understand it and you were to ask me, does it, my mind would say yes, absolutely. But everyone equally being inherently existent, nonetheless, I perceive the self to be more important. How come? How come? How come? Anyone? Any suggestion?
I don't know which one comes first, maybe the discriminative mind or the feeling. Maybe there's a feeling that's involved.
No feeling involved. I don't think this got to do with feeling. What is the sense? Go ahead.
Because I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm the center of my universe.
Yes.
And you're inherently over there.
Yes, because
So
my
we're
mind,
separate, distant, and cut off. Yeah.
because my mind is closest to this eye, right? My mind perceives in terms of location, if you like, my mind is here, my eye is here, right? To my mind, the eye appears as concrete in a way in which it doesn't exist. There's a very strong sense of I. And that is closest to my mind, as opposed to everyone else's eye. You're over there. Even if you hug me, you're never close enough. You'd have to become one with me. You'd have to become one with me to a sense that you're the I. I mean, I don't even refer to you as I. That's why I don't refer to you as I. You're you. Always inherently you, right? There's only one I, and that is this. And that is I from the perspective of my mind. So it's closest to my mind. Closest to my mind. It's that the closest self there is the self that is inherently perceived as that is perceived by my own mental consciousness and inherently existent. And everyone else's self is disconnected inherently over there. Yes, as Venerable Kumbin says, exactly. All right. Oh, so Maud says, because I perceive my feelings, suffering, pleasures, not yours. Yeah, but that is before. That comes a little later, because, yeah, well, I'll talk about it a little bit later. So first of all, the first step is really, yes, so there's my I as opposed to everyone else's, and that is closest. All right. And then, what comes next? I perceive this to be more important, more precious, therefore, which leads to attachment. And here, as Maud is saying, my feelings, so the feelings that now arise in my mind, they're now connected to the I. Remember I said what Yande Rinpoche said. Just a feeling in itself, just a pleasant feeling in my mind, that itself doesn't lead to attachment right away. But I associate the feeling with that I. It's now mixed. That sensation that exists, a sensation in my mind, right? I told you what Yande Rinpoche said last time. So that sensation in my mind is now brought together with my sense of I. So it's my feeling. So the I is connected, my feeling. So I'm more important. I'm clinging to my I. And my feeling, especially my feeling of happiness, my pleasant feeling, is more important. First, there's this exaggerating attitude that exaggerates the importance of the I and the importance of my happiness. Because the mind automatically wishes to be happy. Therefore, it exaggerates and it's now projected, it's now made up, superimposed an I that is not just labeled by the mind, and the happiness of that I. Also, that is not just superimposed by the mind. To my mind, they're really there. And now attached to them. My I, my happiness. What is another word for that? Self-centeredness.
Distorted.
Pardon?
Distorted.
Distorted, yes, a distorted mind that is self-centered now. Self-centered, self-obsessed, if you like, to use another word that may bring it across even better. We're self-obsessed. My happiness, that's more important. That's just for my mind. That is a mental continuum that believes that strongly. Now then, based on that, everything is judged now. For instance, if you now benefit me, if you do something that helps this I, that helps to bring about my happiness, then I exaggerate your positive qualities as well. Before I can get attached, oh, wonderful person, oh, important for my happiness, responsible for my happiness, can't be happy without kind of person. That's the exaggerating attitude, and that leads to attachment towards that person. But only because of the self-centeredness that I always relate it back to. Does that make sense? Benefits me. What we need to understand is before attachment can arise, there's always this exaggerating aspect. Okay? First there's the misconception, then what is closest to my mind is my mind's happiness, and I associate it with the happiness of this I. And now, after this exaggerated sense of importance of I and the happiness of that I now generate attachment to I and my happiness. That's called self-centeredness or self-obsession or self-cherishing, whichever word you want to use. And from then onwards, attachment always relates back to that self-centered mind. You benefit this I and this I's happiness, you're my friend, you're good. You don't benefit it, but you also don't harm it, I don't care about you. I'm totally indifferent towards you. You harm it, I have aversion. I don't like you. Even stronger, I hate you. Okay? Because what I did in the case of aversion, for instance, resentment, whatever kind of negative emotion it is with regard to you, like not liking you, well, I see something negative. I exaggerate the negativity. You've done something. And the thing is this, what's very interesting is also about our attachment, that this is my self-attachment, my attachment to self and I, my self-centeredness, the original attachment, the root attachment. Not the root misconception, but the root attachment. Okay? That root attachment now judges you on the basis only of what you did for me. You do lots of things. I mean, you're not like a butler or something, like who's 24 hours around me. No, you may just do one or two things in the space of 1 week, for instance. And so I can only see that. So I exaggerate. I exaggerate in the sense that you become that service you did to me. It's not just there's this inherent I, the inherent person over there, like inherent Jack over there. But now Jack has done something good for me, whatever it is, make me feel good. And all I see is what he's done for me. So that's it. I don't see any negative quality, right? At least not influenced by attachment. When I have no attachment, I might think, yeah, I see something negative. But emotionally, I don't care. It's not there. On an emotional level, all that counts is what he has done for me and for my happiness. So that's all that appears. No negative aspect can appear to me, to my exaggerating attitude that precedes my attachment towards Jack. So my exaggerating attitude, first of all, blows up what's there to such a degree that I can't see anything negative. And not just that, he becomes that action. Because I'm not attached to the positive action towards me. I'm attached to him. Right? I should become only attached to that action, not to him. But I'm becoming attached to him. So the whole person now becomes that positive aspect. So my mind, therefore, first, the exaggerating attitude exaggerates the positive aspect to such a degree that nothing negative is part of the equation, plus he's one with that positive aspect. And so I'm attached to him. If on the other hand he harms me, you have a similar process, but in this time it's the other way around. It's like the negative. All that counts is the negative. Maybe he found a cure to cancer. Maybe he just saved 50 people from drowning. I couldn't care less. Emotionally, that's not what counts. In fact, I don't want to hear about it. I'm really angry. Right? No. But even before the anger can arise, there's this exaggerating attitude, this exaggerating mind that, oh, he's done that for me. This is really meaningful. This is so great. He is so great. So it's like my mind labels greatness on him, or in the case of the positive. In the case of the negative, sorry, I was with the negative right now. Sorry, Jack. So with the negative now, he's done something negative. He's this negativity to me. He destroyed my happiness. He hurt my feeling. So he's so bad. He's just so terrible. I'm not even thinking rationally. It's just this emotional kind of, this mind on an emotional level, my exaggerating mind. And he becomes that negativity. And now I don't like him. I hate him. And that negativity stays with him. I perceive him as permanently, because for weeks I'm holding a grudge. Right? It becomes, the more intense it becomes, the more wrong views become involved. I perceive him permanent. I perceive him as permanent. If I hold a grudge, he's done that last week or maybe yesterday, whatever. So he's not doing it right now. He's not the same person. And still, to me, he's stuck in that negativity. It's almost like a cover. Or I just kind of, it's almost like a dye. I dyed him in that negativity dye. He can't get rid of that. Although he's totally changed. To my mind, that negative action that was just directed at me, because it was directed at me, I exaggerate it and now I have aversion. And that may last for a while until it wears off and something new comes. But it's usually one of the three. Like, don't care. That's our relationship with most people, right? Because there are only three possibilities. Someone benefits me, someone harms me, or someone doesn't do either, right? Neither harms nor benefits me. So they're neutral, therefore, because there are only three feelings. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. Whoever is responsible for any of these, right, becomes someone I like, I dislike, or I don't care. That is my relation with all sentient beings. It's very simply described. And it all comes down to exaggerating I and my happiness, exaggerating how they exist. First of all, superimposing a mode of existence that's not there. Then superimposing a preciousness and importance that's not there. And then judging everything based on that. Total misconception in all ways. I mean, not only is the root misconception wrong in the way it perceives its object, but also my attachment to the I, that extreme preciousness, that's not in accordance with reality. I'm not more precious and my happiness is not more important. Misconception. Jack being so great and so wonderful, sorry, but that's also exaggerated, right? I mean, good and bad both. And negative, likewise, totally exaggerated, not in accordance with reality. So we act out of not just the root ignorance, we act out of so many wrong perceptions of reality, and we never question them. And we continue to suffer uncontrollably. Why? Because we're so controlled by that root misconception and, of course, then the self-centeredness. Does that make sense? That process. So every time any affliction arises, you can be 100% certain that the main two causes is the root misconception and the root attachment, or the root misconception and self-centeredness. And from there, then, judging by the actions in relation to the I exaggerate the negativity, I exaggerate the positive aspect, react with attachment or anger, or I really don't care. Even that, it's like I'm exaggerate, they're not doing anything for me. So there's this indifference, which is also an affliction. It's usually not mentioned, but it's an affliction that it's like, yeah, it's not one of the afflictions. Very interesting. But this indifference, that where I exaggerate the distance between us, basically, right? I mean, actually, we were strongly connected, and as a sentient being, we're connected, and he benefits me in a way in which I'm not aware of. But it's out of my not understanding that, our dependence on each other. The fact that we once were really, really close, right? Like, but he was my mother, he was my child, he was my father, he was my best friend, and so forth. I've forgotten that. And so my indifference is based on my ignorance in terms of this relationship, for instance. Right? So it's all misconceptions, all misunderstanding, not all, wrong views. Our lives are governed by them. Of course we suffer. Who's surprised? How can we be surprised that we don't experience this inner peace and everything is just okay? How can it be? If our attachment to the self just never gives us any inner peace. Alan, do you want to ask?
No, you started using indifferent instead of don't care.
Indifference, yeah, like I feel just in.
Don't care is such a negative.
Yeah, but indifference is just as negative.
No,
No, I'm talking about the negative indifference, like the negative one. Really, I don't care, right? Yeah, I'm talking about. Okay, that could be. There are different levels, I guess. You could talk about an indifference that is not that negative, but an indifference that is exaggerated again, like, I don't care they die kind of indifference. Something happens to them, good or bad, I really don't care. I don't rejoice when something good happens to them, and I don't have any compassion when something bad happens to them, right? Especially when I'm very, very, very busy with myself. Those moments, when I'm really obsessed, then people dropping dead around me, like this is the time when people's lives are in danger. I've told you this like years ago. Some of you maybe remember this. And I'm stressing this because it shows how deeply rooted our self-centeredness is. I'm not saying we're really bad people, like deep within we're just bad. I'm saying our self-centeredness, we have to be cautious. It is very, very deeply rooted. I gave you the example, I think, of, what was it called? Years ago in Germany, there was this rave, like when people come together and they sing and dance and they, what is it called? Like a rage or a rave. Rave, yeah. It was this rave, young people coming together and having a great time and dancing, and there was all this, what was the kind of music called? Techno. It was like a techno party. That's right. Yeah, a techno party. Sorry, my ignorance. So they were dancing, and some entrances were blocked, and people couldn't get. People kept coming, and the people in the front couldn't get out. It was terrible, and so people were trampled to death. However, what happened was some people held up their mobile phones and filmed it. And later on, the police could use it to analyze what had happened. But the point is, I saw some of the footage. It was showed on the news. And it showed people in their desperation. They couldn't breathe, so they were trampling over other people. Now, this wasn't like anything. They were not in their right mind. It was just survival. It was bare survival. But to me, it was a sign. This goes onto a deeper level. Our self-centeredness, when it comes down to survival, then we don't care about others any longer. It can happen. It can happen. That doesn't mean we're not good people. It just means that our self-centeredness goes to a very subtle level. And we need to be aware of that. And when we practice, we hopefully access that level. So, for instance, parents, if there was someone, I don't think there was anyone with their children there, at least not in those videos, I'm pretty sure they would have taken their children first out, because it's so deeply rooted That's why parents are such good examples for love and compassion, because they put their children first. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, he usually describes it as biological compassion, not compassion that has been generated through meditation, but biological. It's just it's part of nature in general, like a healthy human being, not saying someone with great mental problems, but an ordinary person has this love for their children, just because they're their children, basically, right? For no other reason, because of course everyone has been our child, but we don't feel that way. But in that life, if someone is our child, then we put the child first. It's this almost instinctive, if you like, reaction. And in that moment, you put the child before yourself. So many parents sacrifice their lives for their children, in the animal world as well as in the human world. So this is the one example. That's why it's such a beautiful example, parents' love, because now you need to generate that love for all sentient beings, basically, put them before you. And a bodhisattva would have willingly given his or her life, would have basically used their body as a stepping stone. And maybe some bodhisattvas were in the crowd, just not as part of the footage that I saw. Yeah, but the reason I'm saying that is only for that. I know in my own case, my self-centeredness is very deep-rooted. So I need to be aware of it. I need to know what I'm up against. I'm up against a very powerful enemy. In fact, my only enemy is this.
It's also that it's very subtle.
Exactly, very subtle. We have no access to it right now. But we can access subtler levels of consciousness. For instance, when we dream, very subtle mind. But then what can you practice? Lucid dreaming. So you can even control your dreams. So what I'm trying to say here at the same time is, because well, first of all, we need to be aware of it to then deal with it effectively, even on a subtler level. And we can do that. However, if we ignore the subtler level, then we work only with the coarser level. And of course, the subtler one will still have a great influence on us. And I'm saying this because practicing great compassion is so difficult. So difficult because of that original clinging. That's why it's difficult. If we didn't have that, it'd be the easiest thing in the world. It'd be so easy. So practicing great compassion means at the same time practicing mindfulness when it comes to our self-centered mind, to become aware of it. That's the first step, watching our own mind. When is self-centeredness taking over? Can I stop it? Can I reduce it? Can I stop it from being active for like hours on end? It's not always active. It has an influence when it lies dormant, but then every now and then it becomes active. And when it's active, that's when it's most important that we apply the antidotes. Oh, what about others? What about others? Yeah. So we practice them in tandem, watching out for self-centeredness while at the same time generating more closeness towards other sentient beings, almost like they're becoming part of the I. Or as Geshe Thupten Pelsang once suggested, it's like you visualize this is others and the other person is I. It's really weird to do, but we've accustomed ourselves to think I when it comes to this mind and body. Well, we can do the same, right? This is I. Here's other. This is other. This is I, right? There's so many different ways. It's just mind training, even though we know that's not the conventional term, but it's not about conventionality. It's about, we go beyond conventionality. We perceive this to be an inherent I, so we counteract that. Isn't that beautiful? And it's so much work. It takes so much time. But what's better to do? Right? Anything better to do? Continue to be self-centered and create more problems for the future. And now this one time that we have found a way to, or found a system that helps us to overcome it, is there anything better to do? But yeah, the problem is it takes a lot of time. Yeah. What was the homework for today?
Reflect on the three sufferings.
Yes?
Reflect on the three sufferings.
Reflecting, yeah, that was the meditation. Yeah, reflecting on the suffering. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. As in preparation for renunciation. But what was the homework into?
The realization of emptiness should come before great compassion, so why is that not?
Oh,
the
yeah.
root?
That's right. Okay. So we've heard that going back to bodhicitta, bodhicitta is preceded by great compassion. Great compassion is preceded by renunciation of samsara, or the wish to be free from samsaric suffering. And for each one, you need to realize emptiness first. We need to realize emptiness in order to understand that liberation is possible. It's possible to overcome the three types of sufferings. Why? Because we can remove the root misconception. Why? Because it's a wrong consciousness. Its object inherent existence doesn't exist. Understanding that is the same as understanding emptiness. Then, when we focus not on the self, we now focus on all sentient beings. So renunciation, the focus is on the I, right? Renunciation, the focus is on the I, but not in an exaggerated fashion. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said many times, during many teachings, His Holiness has said, renunciation, you focus on the I, and you want the I to be free from suffering, from its limitations. Then you focus on all sentient beings and wish the same for them. Just the focal object is different, the aspect is the same. Does that make sense? So we start off with focusing on the self and just understanding good old samsaric suffering. And by reflecting on its drawbacks, on its disadvantages, on everything I discussed, for instance, last time, and more, there's so much more to it. So reflecting on that, we generate a kind of wariness, a sense, I don't want this. I want to be free from this. I want to overcome that. Having done that, you then focus on all sentient beings and wish for them to be free from samsaric suffering and so forth. That's the first step. Of course, then you may go further with sentient beings. May they also overcome all the obscurations, not just samsara, not just the afflictive obscurations or the obscurations to liberations, also the cognitive obscurations, the obscurations to enlightenment. And then I generate bodhicitta, or the wish to become a Buddha for them. That's kind of the order. But for each of those, I need to know whether it's possible to achieve that. Is it possible to achieve liberation for myself? I need to realize what? Emptiness. I need to realize whether liberation is possible for others. Need to realize emptiness. Need to realize whether Buddhahood is possible. Need to realize emptiness. Yeah? But why is it that here only the mind that realizes emptiness in order to understand that Buddhahood is possible is mentioned, which comes after great compassion, right? First you have great compassion, and then you reflect, oh, what is the best way to accomplish the greatest benefit for sentient beings? Buddhahood. And to know Buddhahood, you need to reflect also on the emptiness, but in relation here, or with the aim to understand that Buddhahood is possible. And that comes after great compassion. Why? Why is that mind realizing emptiness mentioned and not the mind realizing emptiness that precedes great compassion? What's the purpose of the author? What's the purpose of the author?
To advertise Buddhahood.
To advertise great compassion.
A great compassion.
To advertise great compassion, right? But anyway, I mean, the root, yeah, it's like what Ellen said last time, maybe not in those words, but great compassion carries everything. To point out, to really say, that should be our main motivation for everything. Yeah? In that sense, even your mind realizing emptiness in preparation for understanding that Buddhahood is possible is based on great compassion. Great compassion is getting you to reflect on, is Buddhahood possible or not. Previous to that, great compassion didn't play a role. You did realize emptiness. But you want to emphasize that I mean, what is the author? You know, the text here is called Entering the Middle Way, right? Some translate it as supplementing the middle way, but that's actually not a correct translation. For a simple reason, because the commentaries, they say there's two ways by which you enter the middle way. One is the textual entering and the entering by a person. Which means the text enters into the middle way by way of explaining it. The person enters into the middle way by practicing it. So then it doesn't make sense. The person supplements the middle way by practicing it. That doesn't work, right? In the commentaries talks about the text that enters and the person that enters. If you say supplement, the person doesn't supplement anything. So the Tibetan word means to enter or to engage. You engage in the middle way. The text engages in the middle way by explaining it. The person studying this engages in the middle way by practicing it. That's what we should do. That's what Chandrakirti is telling us. Engage. Now that I engaged in my text into the fundamental wisdom, you now need to practice it by supplementing it. So you add by supplementing it. And the commentaries do that as well. And they talk about Chandrakirti engaged in the middle way by supplementing it. And in Tibetan, they use a different word, kakon, which means supplementing. So entering or engaging in the fundamental wisdom by supplementing it. What should we do as people, as persons, as students or disciples of this text? We should enter or engage in the middle way, in the fundamental wisdom, by supplementing it, by practicing it through supplementing it, not only, so supplementing it with the explanation of the vast vehicle, for instance. So in other words, we should engage in the middle way by practicing the fundamental wisdom as well as bodhicitta and everything else. So to practice the entire path, as described by Chandrakirti. Does that make sense? So that's our personal responsibility. So are you a disciple of the entering the middle way? If you're not, then you have to practice it. That is your job. Chandrakirti's job is done. Now our job is to practice it. And what should be the driving force? Great compassion. That's the root. The root of our understanding of emptiness, the root of our awakening mind, the contrived mind. And that in turn, these three are the root for our future bodhisattva. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So this is my answer to this, but of course you should analyze. Maud says, if I would feel your suffering when you burn your hand, I would very, very much take care of your hand as much as of mine. Exactly. How beautiful is that? Right? So you don't have to feel the suffering of the other person, but understand it. I don't think it's necessary because parents don't feel their children suffering. They say they do, but I mean, they can't bear the suffering of their child, and the child suffers and they can't bear it. So they say, I feel the same. I don't think they literally feel the sensation.
Witness.
Pardon? They witness it, yes. But they identify so strongly with it that they would before. This is why parents are told on the airplane, parents in particular, put the gas mask on first before helping. And usually you have a mother sitting there putting on the gas mask before putting it on the child, like they show these videos oftentimes, right? So because parents have a tendency to help their children first. That's why put on the gas mask, or the oxygen, not gas mask. Oxygen. The oxygen mask.
Put that one on the kid.
Look at first. Oops. Okay. All right. Yeah, anyway. exaggeration of one's own I. Venerable Yangdorn writes, in a practical everyday sense, one reason may be because we know that we cannot expect others to look after ourselves. Of course I have to be selfish because who else will look after myself, right? There is a bit of that sense, but actually we're not looking after ourselves, we're harming ourselves, right? If we were to really look after ourselves, we would be looking after all sentient beings. That doesn't mean we have to sacrifice ourselves. That's a problem in the West, actually. I think we associate altruism with self-sacrifice. In the sense that I give myself up for the benefit of others. And that's not what is meant here with this practice. If I give myself up, I cannot become a Buddha. If I stop eating and drinking and no, I need to stay strong for the benefit of others. Everything I do is for the benefit. So I have a personal responsibility for the welfare of all sentient beings, to eat well, to sleep well, to exercise, to look after my health, in other words. I even have a personal responsibility to be happy. And in some cultures, I've been told once in Israel, I was told, I didn't understand that, but then I recognized, of course, that's part of the Abrahamic faith, all of them to a certain degree, like a feeling of guilt if you are happy and others are not. But I'm not talking about the happiness that comes from, being wealthier than others, a kind of a feeling of superiority, but rather a feeling of satisfaction and inner peace. Because how can I benefit others if I'm totally upset and depressed and have no energy? I mean, this sense of satisfaction and happiness that I'm talking about here, this inner peace, like a sense of contentment, gives me so much strength to work for the benefit of others. There's no need to look after my own welfare because I'm content. So I can focus all my time and energy on others. In that way, we have a personal responsibility, right? It's not about being content and the rest of the world, who cares? No, that's not it. It's like, okay, I'm content, I'm satisfied. What about others? Now I've got the energy, the strength to work for others. In that way, I have a personal responsibility to be physically and mentally well. I don't want to put pressure on you, on the other hand, like, oh, you're upset, you're really deserting. No. I'm saying we all deserve to be happy, and self-love and self-compassion are important. Because we are equally a sentient being, we deserve to be happy, we need to look after our own happiness, but also with the other's benefit in mind. Right? Okay. All right. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
It's about the arising of the self-judgment mind process.
It's about what?
The process of the arising of the
The process of the arising of the self-centered mind, yeah?
Could it be that the basis is love that gets contaminated, since love is the wish for someone to be happy, and also to beings want to be happy, and some people get really confused and commit really horrible actions, but I think the basic motivation is to be happy. So like the mind is
I see.
clear, but it gets contaminated. Could it be that this mind is love that got confused?
Okay, so your question is self-centeredness, is that a distorted version of love towards the self? So basically there was pure love towards the I, but that got distorted, so we exaggerated then this need for happiness and it turned into self-centeredness. Is that your question? As part of the process of how we got from the misconception to this self-centeredness, that exaggerated care for ourselves. Is that right? Did I understand that?
Because, I think ultimately there is no distinction between loving not exactly from loving the I, because love is, loving the I and loving other sentient beings.
Loving I and loving other sentient beings.
Could it be that the basic motivation for these things is love? It just gets really, really contaminated.
So the basic motivation is love. It just got really, really contaminated. That's a little bit like, first there was a paradise, and then we ate the wrong apple, kind of. You see, like it almost seems like we start off with something really pure and that got distorted, right?
Like our mind.
Like our mind, yes. Of course, I'm not talking about a place so much, but we could say like in the Abrahamic faith, this whole aspect of paradise and then paradise turning into samsara could also be like on a mental basis, right? Unfortunately, in this case, no. I know it wouldn't be nice. Wouldn't it be nice? Love was like there first, right? No, I agree. I was raised in that same background, right? Everything was fine first, and then the whole mess started. That's really like, yeah, the way the for instance, Book of Genesis. Is it the Book of Genesis? Isn't it? Oh wait, I'm not sure. In the Torah, it's probably not the Book of Genesis. Pardon? About how the world came into existence, Adam and Eve. Is that the Book of Genesis? Okay. Okay. So anyway, the point is that I was raised with that idea as well. So we started with something good and that got distorted. But from a Buddhist point of view, since beginningless time, we had that distorted view. It didn't start off with love. But we always had the potential for love. Love was always in our mind, but it never came to the forefront. It was never activated. So in a certain way, I guess you could say, yes, it was always there. Our mind was always in the nature of being loving. But it was not that love at some point was active and it degenerated. In fact, if it did, it would be very scary. You know why? Because that would be like, we can always fall back again. Once that loving mind, that love and compassion that we all have the potential to experience, when they fully manifest, then everything else falls away. But if there was a time when it did fully manifest, that meant we lost it. And even if we become liberated or become enlightened, we could lose it again because we did at the beginning of time.
But I didn't mean that as Buddha nature is within us, even when we commit the most negative actions.
Yes.
So love is, I didn't mean that once there was love and now it goes. Like.
Okay, then I misunderstood.
It's there within every action.
Oh, okay. Oh, you didn't mean that there was love first and then that became afflicted and turned into something else. That's not what you meant. You're saying even in the most evil action there is love.
Yes.
That would mean that even the most evil action is influenced by love. Or not that. Even the most, okay, let me rephrase it. Even within the most evil action, the mind that is responsible for the most evil action, still at its very nature is limitless love and compassion. Yes, I agree. Okay, in that way, it's not active at all, not in that moment, and it doesn't influence the action in that moment. However, I agree. I misunderstood what you said. I thought you said first there was love at some point in time and that became distorted. No. Okay, so since beginning this time, our mind is there in its pure nature. It's none of the afflictions that have been with our mind since beginning this time are in the nature of the mind. So they're not touched in that sense, not destroyed. It can't destroy any positive quality of our own mind. That's the good thing. We can destroy the negativities, but we can never destroy the positive ones. We can totally destroy the negativities. We can't destroy the positive aspects. Yes, Jack.
What positive aspects are there in our mind from beginning this time?
What aspects are in our mind since beginning this time? All the afflictions.
I said positive.
Oh, positive ones. Oh, all the positive ones. Okay, what are the... love for your children?
So we're saying love for our children is inherent?
Inherent as in like, not inherently existent inherent, but it's in the nature of our mind. Yes, inherent.
How do you split that hair?
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. That's we're getting into... Yeah, okay, I'll say this much. Okay. When we say inherent, it means it's in the nature of. It's in the nature of, right? So for instance, is it in the nature of water to be hot? Jack, is it in the nature of, no. Is it in the nature of water to be wet?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it not in the nature of water to be wet? Why is it not in the nature of water to be hot? Because we need an external stimuli or stimulus that heatens the water. Then I would argue it's not in the nature of water to be wet, because you need something other than water for wetness to happen. You need oxygen, you need other things. So therefore, on a conventional level, on a relative level, we could say, yes, it's in the nature of water to be wet, but not in an absolute sense. Similarly, the United States is an independent country, but not in an absolute sense. It's independent in relation to the fact that it can govern its own policies, or it's economically economically it's not independent, but in terms of its political decision, it's relatively independent, right? So in relativity, yes, it's in relation to the fact that you don't have to be taught, in relation to the fact that no one teaches you to love your children. In relation to the fact that no one needs to teach you to love your children, in relation to that, we say it's inherent. It's not absolutely inherent. In other words, independently of anything and just inherent. That's not what we mean. So inherent existence, that's the object of negation, is saying it's in the nature of something, or it's inherent without depending on anything. That is impossible. But in a relative fashion, we can still say, in relation to the fact, as I just said, that no one needs to teach us to love our children. We just do this. In that sense, we can say inherent. Yes, absolutely. Was that your argument? Okay, and did I answer it? Okay, good. All right. Okay, oh, we're done. 6 o'clock. Sorry, I didn't get time to, but I'll address the questions. If I haven't answered them yet, I will definitely make a point going through all of your questions in the group. All right. Okay, are we ready to practice? Okay. Pardon? Homework. Yes, I'm trying to think. I was thinking just before I answered this question, I had a homework, but I now forgot again. What was it again? It's not renunciation. What did I talk about today? Compassion. Can anyone help me? What did I talk about today? Pardon? Entering the middle way. Oh yeah, that's why it's called entering the middle way. Yeah, but I don't see any homework in that. Pardon?
Thinking of why we had to...
Yes, very good. That process, to reflect on that process of first there's the misconception that gives rise to exaggerating the importance of the I and mine, which in turn then gives way to exaggerating any benefit we receive, any harm we receive, or neither, giving rise to other afflictions. To reflect on this from your own experience, right? Can you recognize that in yourself? At least partly.
You said that again, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll say it again. Yes, absolutely. This process I described, that chain of events, to sit with yourself and think, is this true from your own experience? First, there's the misconception of I as inherently existent. Excuse me, sorry. Maybe also someone can write it down. First, there's the sense of I as inherently existent. I as opposed to others. Perceiving others as inherently existent, perceiving everything as inherently existent, but in particular when it comes to the I, that sense of the I, which is closest to the mind, thinking along these lines, that then gives rise to, for that mind, the I is more precious. The I, it exaggerates the importance of the I, and it exaggerates the importance of the happiness of that I. Right? It's actually the happiness of the mind, but it associates it now with the I and exaggerates the happiness of I and mine. It exaggerates the importance of the I and of the happiness of the I. Right? And that exaggeration of the I and my happiness gives rise to attachment to I and my happiness, which is self-centeredness. So, therefore, we've had 3 states of mind. Misconception with regard to all phenomena, but in particular with regard to the I, misconceiving that to be inherently existent, which then leads to exaggerating the importance of the I and my happiness, which then leads to attachment to I and my happiness, and the third mind being the misconception, being the self-centeredness, the first type of attachment. And then from there, this is the measuring pole from now on. Does everyone that I'm come in contact with benefit I and my happiness, right? Or I and mine. So of course my happiness is associated with mine, my relatives, my body, my and so forth. But it always goes back to my happiness. Yeah. So if someone harms my children, they harm my happiness. Okay. Therefore, my measuring pole is whatever other people do goes back to that self-centeredness. That I'm more precious, that which is mine is more precious, and in particular, my happiness is most precious. It benefits me, the actions of the other person benefits me. I exaggerate the positive qualities of that person and end up with attachment towards this person, or attachment or desire towards that person. If, on the other hand, they harm me, I end up with resentment or aversion towards that person. And if they don't do either, they don't contribute to my well-being, they don't contribute to my problems, I'm indifferent towards them. Yeah. So to recognize that in your own state of mind, maybe by starting off like, do I divide the world into people I like, I don't like, and I don't care? And then check, where does that come from? Does this go back to the I, to the self-centeredness? And in what way do you recognize these steps in your own self? Okay, that was a long explanation, sorry. Oh gosh, maybe I tried to put them into less words. I'm still myself, I'm stuttering away, so a little difficult to understand. Maybe I'd find a way to make it a little clearer. But once I start writing, I end up writing pages and pages. Remember this and remember that. Try to keep it short. But yeah, if someone of you feels inspired to repeat what I just said, I could always add something to that. Yeah. Anyway, hopefully you understand at least the process to some degree that I described. Misconception, exaggerating attitude, self-centeredness, exaggerated attitude, aversion, exaggerated attitude, attachment, exaggerated attitude, indifference. Yeah? So we always exaggerate before any of these emotions arise. Okay, great. That's your homework. Whatever you understand, I mean, if you can't do it in all its details, but at least to focus on self-centeredness and recognize how it governs our relationship with everyone else. That's really the main point. Okay. All right. So let's dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated today. Once again, may it become a cause for ourselves to generate great compassion, to develop bodhicitta, to realize emptiness, in order to be able to overcome self-centeredness and all the other afflictions, and eventually to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But in order to achieve our goal, we need, of course, our kind masters who guide us through their example and through their words. So let's also dedicate all the virtue towards the long and healthy life of our spiritual masters, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other great masters. And may, of course, whatever virtue we've accumulated become a cause for the afflictions in this world to be slightly reduced, so that there be less hatred, less misunderstanding, and thereby less conflicts. So with this in mind, let's recite prayers. In the snow-encircled land, you are the source of benefit and bliss. Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain in life until samsara ends. The brave Manjushri and also Samantabhadra realize things as they are. Hence, in order to be able to follow their example, I dedicate these merits in the best way. With the dedication praised to Supreme by the victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate all these roots of virtue so that I might engage in the noble bodhisattva deeds. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you very much.